Picture this. A thick fog blankets the still waters of a vast lake, the kind of mist that swallows sound and sight alike. You're standing on the shore, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine. Then, out of nowhere, a distant trumpet blares, a signal from another time, piercing the silence like a warning unheeded. Screams follow, muffled at first, then building into a cacophony of chaos, metal clashing against metal, men crying out in agony. But when the fog lifts, there's nothing there. No battle, no bodies. Just the lake, serene and mocking. This is Lake Trasimene, nestled in the rolling hills of Umbria, central Italy. A place of breathtaking beauty today, but one stained by the blood of thousands over 2 millennia ago. In 217 BC, during the Second Punic War, a Carthaginian general, Hannibal Barca, orchestrated one of history's most devastating ambushes here. Leading his forces through treacherous marshes, Hannibal positioned his army along the northern shore, hidden in the hills under cover of fog. The Roman consul Gaius Flaminius, eager to engage, marched his 25,000-strong army straight into the trap without scouting ahead. The Carthaginians struck from the flanks and rear, turning the narrow defile into a slaughterhouse. After 3 hours of brutal fighting, 15,000 Romans lay dead, many driven into the lake to drown in their heavy armour. Hannibal's losses were minimal, around 2,500, marking this as a masterclass in tactical genius and a catastrophe for Rome. But why revisit this ancient carnage? Because the echoes of that day might not be confined to history books. In modern times, on near the shores of Lake Trasimene, stands the Trasimene Joint Training Facility, a collaborative base for NATO forces, including US and Italian troops, used for exercises in terrain reminiscent of ancient battlegrounds. Established in the late 20th century on land overlooking the lake, it's a place where soldiers hone their skills in ambush tactics, ironically mirroring Hannibal's playbook. Yet, over the years, reports have surfaced from credible military personnel. Unexplained phenomena in the barracks, phenomena that seem tied to that fateful day in 217 BC. These aren't campfire tales. They're accounts from decorated service members, documented in after-action reports and shared in hushed tones. What if the trauma of that ambush lingers, shattering not just Roman legions, but the minds of those who tread the same ground today? As we dive into these stories, ask yourself, could the ghosts of Trasimene still be laying their own traps? Chapter 1. Arrival at the fog-shrouded base. My name is Sergeant First Class Marcus Hale, United States Army. 12 years in, 2 combat tours, places where the threat always had a face, a weapon, and intent you could read in real time. In the summer of 2025, my platoon was pulled from the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Vicenza and sent to the Trasimene Joint Training Facility in Umbria, Italy, for a 2-week joint NATO exercise. The stated purpose was simple: live fire ambush and counter-ambush training on terrain that naturally creates kill zones and choke points. The base occupies a low ridge overlooking Lake Trasimene, a wide, shallow lake bordered by soft hills, olive orchards, and small stone villages that look like they haven't changed in centuries. From the perimeter you can see the entire body of water lying quiet under the sun, almost too still, like it's waiting. During the in-brief, the company commander didn't waste words. This ground is famous for one reason: 217 BC, Hannibal Barca hid his army in these hills and marshes, waited for consul Gaius Flaminius to march 30,000 Romans straight into the trap. Narrow pass between the lake and the slopes. No room to maneuver, no scouts. 15,000 Romans dead in a few hours. Slashed, trampled, drowned when they tried to escape into the water wearing full kit. The lesson is older than the United States. Never let the terrain choose your fight. Don't be Flaminius. We rolled in just before dusk. 6 Humvees and 2 5-tons climbed the twisting access road, tires grinding loose gravel. The sun had already dropped behind the western ridge, leaving the lake a sheet of dull copper. A thin fog was already moving in from the water, pale tendrils sliding across the surface and creeping up the lower slopes like fingers testing the land. Private Ramirez, riding shotgun in my vehicle, leaned forward and stared through the windshield. "This place looks like it's holding its breath, Sarge." I didn't answer. I felt the same pressure behind my eyes, a faint weight in the air that had nothing to do with altitude or humidity. We offloaded in the central motor pool under sodium lights that buzzed and flickered. Building 4, our assigned barracks, was a 2-story concrete block dating from the late Cold War period, and painted the same tired olive drab as every NATO outpost in southern Europe. Inside it smelled of linseed oil, old sweat, gun solvent, and the faint mineral scent that drifts up from the lake on damp evenings. The rooms were 4-man, metal bunks bolted to the floor, green lockers, fluorescent tubes that hummed when you first flipped the switch. I took the top bunk in room 412 with Staff Sergeant Ellis, Specialist Kowalski, and Specialist Chen. Ellis was the quiet Texan who could say more with a single raised eyebrow than most people manage in a paragraph. Kowalski talked enough for 3 people. Chen said almost nothing, but noticed everything a half-second before anyone else. After chow, spaghetti carbonara, crusty bread, and espresso, strong enough to wake the dead. We sat on our bunks and walked through the next day's schedule. Dawn PT on the Ridge Trail, followed by squad-level ambush rehearsals using the lakeside fire breaks as natural lanes. "They put the Rangers right where the Romans got cut to pieces," Ellis said, folding a map with deliberate care. "Feels disrespectful." Kowalski laughed once. "Or poetic. We're training to make sure we don't repeat their mistake." I stayed quiet, looking out the window. The fog had thickened until the parade ground lights were nothing but smeared yellow halos. Lights out at 2200. I lay on my back, hands behind my head, listening to the bass wind down. Generator hum in the distance, an owl calling somewhere in the pines, the soft, steady lap of water against the shore far below. Sleep came quickly after the long drive. At 0300, the sound pulled me awake. A low, rolling rumble, steady and rhythmic, like hundreds of boots striking packed earth in perfect step. Not thunder, marching. I sat up fast enough that my head nearly hit the ceiling. Ellis was already sitting on the edge of his bunk, head tilted, listening. "You hear it too," I whispered. He gave one sharp nod. The sound grew, boots, then low voices in short, clipped phrases I couldn't place. A single trumpet sliced through the night, high and sharp, 3 notes repeated twice like a command. My skin tightened across my shoulders. We moved to the window together. The fog outside had become a solid white wall that swallowed the lights and turned the parade ground into blank nothing. Shapes moved inside it, tall, upright figures advancing in tight formation, shoulder to shoulder. Something long and slender held in their hands. Spears, not rifles. I blinked hard, trying to force reality back into place. "That's not our people," Kowalski said from behind us, voice thin. Chen joined us, breathing shallow and quick. Training in the dark, with no lights. The formation passed directly beneath our window, close enough that I could make out the outline of crested helmets, rectangular shields, the dull glint of bronze in the fog-diffused light. One figure paused, turned its head toward the barracks. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw eyes, hollow, exhausted, burning with something that wasn't anger and wasn't fear, but both at once. Then the trumpet sounded again, louder, closer, and the entire column wheeled toward the lake path and melted into the mist. We stood there, 4 grown men in PT shorts and T-shirts, breathing like we'd sprinted a mile. Ellis spoke first, voice low. "Wind. Or some audio test the Italians are running for the exercise." No one answered. We went back to our bunks, but sleep didn't return. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that trumpet again, felt the weight of those unseen eyes. Somewhere far down the slope, a single human scream rose, short, raw, terrified, then stopped as though a hand had clamped over the mouth. I lay staring at the ceiling cracks until grey light began to leak through the window. The fog was still there, thick and patient, waiting for night to fall again. Whatever had marched past our building wasn't finished with us, and deep down I already knew we would go looking for it. Chapter 2. The Midnight Investigation. The next morning hit like any other training day. Réveil at 05:30, formation on the parade ground, and then a 4-mile out and back along the ridge trail with the lake glinting far below. The fog had burned off by sunrise, leaving the water flat and blue, the hills sharper green under a cloudless sky. We ran in platoon formation, boots pounding gravel, breath fogging in the cool air. Nobody mentioned the night before, not a word about trumpets or marching shadows. We were all too busy pretending it hadn't happened. Breakfast was quick, eggs, toast, strong coffee in the mess hall. Then straight into the day's work. The exercise cadre had us on the lakeside fire breaks by 0800. The terrain was perfect for the scenario. Narrow dirt tracks flanked by dense scrub on one side and a steep drop to the water on the other. "This is your Trasimene," the lead instructor barked. "Use the high ground, conceal your elements, and spring the trap when they're committed. Don't be the Romans who walked into it blind." We nodded, checked weapons, and split into squads. My team drew the flanking role, set up overwatch on the ridge, wait for the enemy convoy to pass the choke point, then hit them from the side. We spent the morning rehearsing dry runs, then went live with blank rounds and simunition. By noon, we were soaked in sweat, covered in dust, and feeling the rhythm of the job again. The lake looked innocent in daylight, just a big mirror reflecting the sky. I caught myself glancing at it more than once, remembering that single scream from the dark hours. Ellis noticed. During a water break, he stepped close and spoke low. "You keep looking down there like you expect something to climb out." I shrugged. "I'm just thinking about the history." He gave me that long look of his. History doesn't scream at 3 a.m. We wrapped early because of a range safety issue. Someone's barrel overheated, and were back at the barracks by 1600. Showers, clean uniforms, evening chow. The Italian cooks had put out lasagna and tiramisu. Morale lifted for about 30 minutes. After chow, we drifted back to the room. Kowalski pulled out a deck of cards. Chen opened a book. Ellis sat on his bunk cleaning his rifle, even though it didn't need it. I stood at the window, watching the sun drop behind the hills. The fog was already forming again, thin at first, then thickening fast as the temperature dropped. By 2000, the parade ground lights were bleeding into white halos once more. We didn't talk about it directly. We just waited. At 2300, the base went quiet. Lights out at 2330. I lay on my bunk, fully dressed under the blanket. Boots on, flashlight clipped to my belt. Nobody asked why. At 0100, the sound returned. Same low rumble, same perfect cadence of boots on packed earth. This time, it was closer, almost directly outside Building 4. Ellis was up first. He didn't speak, just pointed toward the door. I nodded. Kowalski and Chen followed without a word. We moved down the hallway in socks to stay quiet, then slipped outside through the side exit. The fog was chest-high now, cold and wet against the skin. We pulled on NVGs, green world, ghostly outlines. The marching was unmistakable, coming from the direction of the lake path. We advanced in a loose diamond. Weapons at low ready, even though we carried only sidearms and flashlights. Training habit. The sound led us past the motor pool, down the gentle slope toward the water. 50 meters from the shore, the path narrowed between two low rises. That was where we stopped. The formation was right in front of us, dozens of figures moving in tight ranks, crested helmets catching faint starlight through the mist. Rectangular shields overlapping, pila held at the ready. Romans, not actors, not projections. The detail was too sharp. The leather straps of the sandals, the sweat stains on the tunics, the chipped paint on the shield bosses. One legionary near the centre turned his head. His face was young, maybe 20, eyes wide with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who has already seen the end coming. He opened his mouth as if to shout a warning, but no sound came out. Then the trumpet blasted again, 3 sharp notes, and the entire column surged forward, straight toward the imaginary ambush point down the path. We pressed against the slope to let them pass. Cold air washed over us as they moved by, close enough that I could smell wet wool, iron, and something metallic like blood. One figure brushed my arm. There was no impact, only a sudden bone-deep chill that made my teeth ache. Kowalski sucked in a breath and stepped back. Chen whispered, "They're not solid." Ellis just watched, jaw tight. The formation reached the choke point and disappeared into thicker fog. Silence fell, heavy and wrong. Then from the lake itself came the first to scream, raw, panicked, the sound of a man who knows he's about to die. More joined it, splashing, shouts in Latin, metal ringing on metal. The battle noise rolled up the slope like a wave. We stood frozen for maybe 10 seconds. Then Ellis turned. Back to the barracks. Now. We moved fast, retracing our steps, hearts hammering. Inside Building 4, we locked the door behind us and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Nobody spoke for a long minute. Finally, Kowalski broke the quiet. That wasn't a prank. That wasn't wind. Chen nodded slowly. They looked tired, like they'd been doing this every night for 2,000 years. I looked at Ellis. He met my eyes. "We can't report this. Not yet. They'll pull us off the exercise, send us to medical, write us up for stress reactions. But we also can't pretend it's nothing." He paused. "So what do we do?" I thought about the young legionary's face, the warning he couldn't voice. "We come back tomorrow night," I said. "Same time. Same place. We watch again. We listen, and we figure out what they're trying to tell us." Outside, the lake kept screaming. The fog pressed against the windows like it wanted in. We went back to our bunks, but nobody slept. We just waited for the next night to come. Chapter 3. Shadows in the Barracks. The second night changed everything. We had seen them outside, moving through the fog like a memory that refused to fade. After that, we agreed on one rule. No one went anywhere alone after dark. Not to the latrine, not to the vending machine, not even to the end of the hallway. We also agreed to keep our mouths shut to the rest of the platoon. Explaining marching Roman ghosts to a bunch of soldiers who were already sleep-deprived and homesick would only get us laughed at or reported up the chain for adjustment issues. So we carried on like normal during the day. Day 3 started the same. 05:30 formation, PT on the ridge, breakfast, then back to the lakeside ranges for more ambush drills. The cadre pushed us harder this time. Full combat load, live rounds on the steel targets, timed manoeuvres with smoke and flashbangs to simulate chaos. We performed well. My squad executed a textbook L-shaped ambush that left the enemy element pinned and smoking. The instructors nodded approval. On paper, everything looked fine. But every time we paused, every time the wind shifted off the lake, I caught myself listening for trumpets that weren't there. By 1600, we were back in Building 4, stripping gear, cleaning weapons, writing after-action notes. The fog started early again, thicker than the previous nights, almost luminous under the sodium lights. We ate dinner in silence, then returned to room 412. No cards tonight, no small talk. We sat on our bunks and waited. At 23:45, the first shadow appeared. It began on the far wall, near the locker row. A faint outline at first, like someone had projected a silhouette with a weak flashlight. Then it sharpened. A Roman legionary, tall, broad-shouldered, crested helmet tilted forward, stood with his back to us, shield raised, gladius drawn. He didn't move. He simply existed there, darker than the wall itself. We stared. Nobody breathed loud enough to break the quiet. Kowalski whispered, Sarge, you seeing this?" I nodded once. Ellis stood slowly, never taking his eyes off the figure. Chen stayed seated, knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them like he was trying to make himself smaller. The shadow shifted. It took one step forward, then another. No sound, no footfalls, just a smooth glide across the concrete. When it reached the center of the room, it stopped again. Then, very slowly, it turned. The face was impossible to make out. Features blurred into darkness, but the posture screamed exhaustion. Shoulders slumped, head slightly bowed. The way men look after hours of fighting and still expecting more. Before we could react, a second shadow appeared on the adjacent wall. Another legionary, this one crouched, holding a wound in his side. Blood, black in the dim light, dripped steadily from between his fingers. A third emerged near the door, back pressed to the frame, as though guarding the exit. Within seconds, the room had 5 of them, silent, motionless, watching us. Ellis spoke first, voice steady but low. "They're not attacking, they're waiting." I stood up, keeping my hands visible. "If you can hear me," I said to the room, "we're not the enemy. We're just passing through. Whatever happened here, it's over." No response. But the first figure, the one in the center, tilted his head slightly as though listening. Then he raised his gladius and pointed it at the window. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. Through it, we could see more shapes moving on the parade ground, dozens now, forming ranks, shields locked. The same slow, relentless advance toward the lake path. The shadow in the room lowered his sword and stepped backward, melting into the wall until only a faint outline remained. Then the lights flickered. Not the normal power surge. The fluorescence dimmed to a dull orange, then pulsed. With each pulse, the shadows grew sharper, more solid. The wounded one near the locker let out a sound, not a voice exactly, but a long scraping exhale, like air forced through torn lungs. Chen flinched hard enough that his bunk creaked. "Easy," I said. "They're not touching us." But they were moving closer. The centre figure glided forward again until he stood less than an arm's length from me. I could feel the cold now, sharp, dry, like opening a freezer door in winter. My breath fogged in front of my face. Up close, the details were worse. Dents in the helmet, torn leather straps, the faint outline of a gash across the throat that never quite healed. He raised his hand, not to strike, to point, straight at my chest, then past me toward the bunks, then back to the window. A message. "You, here, outside, the same." Ellis stepped beside me. "They want us to follow them again." Kowalski shook his head fast. "No way! Last time we almost froze solid just standing near them." "We don't have to go out there," I said. "But we need to understand why they keep showing up in our room." As if in answer, the wounded shadow near the locker took a step toward Chen. Chen scrambled backward until his back hit the wall. The shadow stopped, lowered its hand, and simply stood there, bleeding, staring, waiting. Then the lights snapped back to full brightness. All 5 figures dissolved like smoke caught in a draught, are gone in less than a second. The room felt suddenly normal again, too warm, too ordinary. But the cold lingered in my bones. We didn't speak for almost a minute. Finally, Ellis broke the silence. "They're not trying to hurt us. They're trying to show us something." Chen's voice was barely above a whisper. "They're trapped. Every night they relive it. And now we're in the middle of it." I looked at the window. The fog was still there, thicker than ever, and through it I could see the faint glow of the parade ground lights. The shapes were still moving, still marching, still heading toward the lake. "Tomorrow night," I said, "we don't just watch from the path. We go down to the shore. We stand where the Romans died. If they want to tell us something, that's where they'll do it." Nobody argued. We knew the alternative. Ignore them. Pretend it's stress. Wait for the exercise to end. But deep down we all understood the same thing. Whatever was happening here wasn't going to stop when our convoy rolled out. It had been waiting 2,000 years. A few more days wouldn't matter. We lay back on our bunks, eyes open, listening to the lake. Somewhere out there, in the white blindness of the fog, the screams started again. Quieter this time. Closer. Like they were calling us by name. Chapter 4. The Drowned Voices. By the 4th night we were no longer pretending this was coincidence or imagination. The shadows in the barracks had been a warning. The marching column had been an invitation. Now the lake itself was speaking, and it wasn't asking politely. Day 4 followed the same brutal rhythm. 0 to 5:30 wake up, PT in formation, breakfast. Then, straight into the most realistic phase of the exercise yet. The cadre had us running full-spectrum ambush scenarios, day and night rehearsals, Liv 5.56 on steel, smoke grenades, pyrotechnics, the works. We moved like a well-oiled machine, but every time we paused near the water's edge, I felt the pull. The lake looked too calm, too deep for how shallow it really is. Every ripple seemed deliberate. We finished late. Sunset bled red across the water, then the fog rolled in faster than any night before. By 2100, the base was wrapped in white so thick the motor pool lights looked like distant campfires. We ate in the mess hall without tasting the food, then returned to Building 4. No one suggested cards or movies. We simply waited. At 00:15, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in under a minute. Our breath fogged, the window glass frosted from the inside. Outside, the fog pressed so hard against the panes it looked like milk had been poured over them. Then the voices started. They didn't come from the parade ground or the path. They came from below, from the direction of the lake, rising through the floor, through the walls, through the air itself. At first it was just a murmur, like a crowd talking far away. Then words separated out. Latin. Rough, desperate, overlapping. Adiuva nos, help us, help us. Kowalski sat bolt upright. You hear that? We all did. The voices grew clearer, closer, as though the speakers were moving upward through layers of earth and water. Names, ranks, please. Flaminius. Perdidit nos. Flaminius lost us. Ego suffoco. I'm drowning. Frater meus. Brother, my brother. Ellis stood and walked to the window. He wiped a hand across the glass, clearing a small circle. Through it we could see nothing but white. But the voices were loud enough now to make the bunk frames vibrate. I made the call. We're going down there, not to fight, to listen. If they want something from us, we need to hear it clearly. Nobody argued. We pulled on boots, jackets, gloves. No rifles, only flashlights and the sidearms we always carried. We moved down the stairwell in silence, boots soft on the concrete, and slipped out the side door. The fog swallowed us the moment we stepped outside. Visibility dropped to 5 meters. The cold was wet and sharp, like breathing through ice. We followed the slope downward, using the faint glow of the base lights behind us as a reference until even those disappeared. The path to the shore was narrow, bordered by low scrub and rocks. We walked single file, Ellis leading, me on rear. Halfway down, the voices changed. They weren't just pleading anymore. They were screaming. Sub aqua! Sub aqua! Under the water! Armor gravis! Too heavy! Non-possum! I can't breathe. The sound wasn't coming from the air. It was coming from the lake itself, bubbling up, gurgling, as though men were still trapped beneath the surface, mouths open, lungs filling. We reached the shore. The water was invisible beneath the fog, but we could hear it lapping gently against gravel, a soft counterpoint to the agony rising from it. We spread out along the edge, boots in the shallows. The cold soaked through instantly. Then shapes began to appear, not on the surface. In it, faces, pale, eyes wide, mouths working. Men in segmented armor, helmets lost, hair plastered to skulls. They rose slowly, as though fighting terrible weight. One reached out, fingers breaking the surface, grasping at nothing. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and water poured out. Another surfaced beside him, younger, barely more than a boy, clawing at the straps of his mail. His eyes locked on mine for a heartbeat. Terror. Recognition. Hope. "Auxilium," he rasped. The word broke the surface like a stone dropped in reverse. "Help!" Chen stepped forward without thinking. "We're here," he said, voice cracking. "We see you." The boy's hand stretched toward him. The instant his fingertips brushed Chen's boot, the air turned electric. A jolt ran through all of us. Cold, so intense it burned. Chen staggered back. The boy's form dissolved into foam and mist, but his voice lingered. Soft now, almost grateful. "Gratias. Thank you." More faces rose. Dozens. Scores. They didn't attack. They didn't beg. They simply looked at us, exhausted, resigned, waiting to see if we would run like everyone else who had ever stood on this shore. Ellis spoke quietly. "They're not trying to drown us. They're showing us what happened, what's still happening to them." I nodded. "Every night they die again. Every night they call for help that never comes." The voices began to overlap, a chorus of drowning men reciting the same litany. Names of centurions, curses at Hannibal, prayers to Mars, pleas to family they would never see again. The water churned as though hundreds of bodies were thrashing beneath it, then, abruptly, silence. The faces vanished. The lake went flat. The fog thinned just enough that we could see the opposite shore, a dark line of trees under faint moonlight. We stood there another full minute, waiting for the next wave. Nothing came. Kowalski finally spoke, voice hoarse. They stopped when we answered. Chen was shaking. They wanted to be seen, heard, acknowledged. Ellis turned back toward the path. "We can't stay here all night, but we can't ignore this either." I looked at the water one last time. It was calm again, reflective, innocent. But I knew better now. Beneath that mirror, thousands of men were still fighting to breathe. "We come back tomorrow," I said. "Same time. We bring something, a marker, a prayer. Something to say we remember." Nobody disagreed. We climbed the slope in silence, fog clinging to our clothes like wet bandages. When we reached Building 4 and locked the door behind us, the barracks felt different. Smaller, haunted in a new way, not by fear, but by sorrow. We didn't sleep. We sat on our bunks and listened to the quiet. Somewhere far below, the lake held its breath again. But this time, it wasn't waiting to scream. It was waiting to see what we would do next. Chapter 5. Hannibal's Echo. By the 5th night, the lake had stopped screaming and started listening. We had stood on the shore the previous evening and answered the drowned voices. We had looked into faces that had been waiting 2,000 years to be seen. Something shifted after that. The air felt heavier, expectant, as though the entire ridge was holding its breath for the next move. Day 5 was the hardest of the exercise so far. The cadre ran us through a 36-hour continuous scenario. Night movement, dawn raid, sustained defense, counterattack, all under simulated chemical threat conditions. MOPP, 4 gear, masks, gloves, the works. We were exhausted before noon. Sweat soaked through the charcoal filters. Every breath tasted like rubber and salt. But we pushed. We had to. If we cracked now, the cadre would notice, and questions would follow. Questions we couldn't answer. We finished the final assault phase just before 2000. The instructors called it a day. We stripped the gear in the decon tent, showered, ate mechanically, returned to Building 4. The fog was already so thick outside that the windows looked painted white. No one spoke about what we planned to do. We didn't need to. The decision had been made on the shore. At 23:30 we geared up again. Jackets, boots, flashlights, sidearms. No NVGs this time. The green glow felt wrong, like cheating. We wanted to see with our own eyes. We left the barracks and walked the same path down to the lake. The fog parted just enough to let us through, then closed behind us like a curtain. Halfway down the slope we heard it. Not trumpets, not screams, but a single deep note. A low horn, war horn, sounded once from the high ground to our left. It rolled across the water and came back as an echo that felt alive. We stopped. From the ridge above us, shapes began to descend. Not Romans this time. Taller figures, leaner. Different armour, scale mail, oval shields, long swords, curved at the tip. Numidians on foot, Iberians with crescent blades, Libyans in leopard skins, Gauls with torques and lime-stiffened hair. And at the centre, mounted, a single rider. He wore no helmet. One eye was gone, the socket dark and scarred. A crimson cloak hung from his shoulders. The horse moved without sound, hooves leaving no mark on the damp earth. Hannibal Barca. The column stopped 20 metres above us, arrayed along the slope exactly as they must have been in 217 BC. The general raised his right hand. Every warrior froze. Silence swallowed the world. Then he spoke. The voice was quiet, measured, carrying without effort. Not Latin. Punic, I think. Harsh consonants, rolling vowels. We shouldn't have understood it, but we did. "You have seen my victory," he said. "You have seen their defeat. You have stood where they drowned and answered when they called. Now look at me." He turned the horse so the single eye fixed on us. The gaze felt physical, like pressure against the sternum. "I took their army. I broke their consul. I sent 15,000 souls into this water in a single afternoon. And yet here I stand, night after night, bound to the same ground. Do you know why?" No one answered. We couldn't. "Because victory without end is its own prison," he continued. "I won the battle, I lost the war. Rome never forgot. Rome never forgave. And so the dead keep their place, and I keep mine. Watching the trap reset, watching them die again, watching no one come to finish what I began." He gestured toward the lake. "They call for rescue. I call for release." The warriors behind him shifted, not threatening, waiting. Ellis spoke first, voice rough from fatigue and cold. "What do you want from us?" Hannibal's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Witness, not as Romans, not as conquerors, as soldiers who know what it is to march into ground that remembers you. Speak my name, speak theirs. Let the story move beyond this fog. Let it leave this place." He leaned forward in the saddle. "But know this, if you turn away now, if you leave without marking the debt, the nights will not end when your convoy departs. The fog will follow. The voices will follow. The trap will wait for you in other places, under other skies." The words landed like a field order, clear, non-negotiable. I stepped forward. My boots crunched on gravel. "We'll remember," I said. "We'll carry it. But how do we end it for you?" The general looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached down and drew a short dagger from his belt. He reversed it, offered the hilt toward me. "Take the oath," he said. "Swear on iron and blood that you will speak the truth of this place when you leave it. Not as myth, not as ghost story, as history that still bleeds." I hesitated only a second. Then I reached up and closed my hand around the hilt. The metal was cold, real, solid. I spoke clearly. "I swear We will tell what happened here, to the living and the dead. We will not let the trap stay closed." One by one, Ellis, Kowalski, and Chen stepped forward and repeated the words. Each took the hilt in turn. Each felt the same cold weight. When the last of us finished, Hannibal nodded once. The dagger vanished from my hand like smoke. He straightened in the saddle and raised his voice, not to us, but to the ranks behind him. "Victoria!" The shout was taken up by every throat on the ridge, a roar that shook the air, that rolled down to the lake and across the water. The fog pulsed with it, brightened, then dimmed. Then, slowly, the figures began to fade, not dissolve, not disappear. Fade, as though stepping backward through time. Hannibal was the last to go. He held my gaze until the very end, the single eye calm, almost relieved. When he was gone, the fog lifted, not gradually, all at once. Moonlight poured down. The lake lay open and silver. No screams, no voices, just water and wind. We stood there another full minute, breathing hard, waiting for something to come back. Nothing did. Ellis finally spoke. "Did we just negotiate with Hannibal Barca?" Kowalski gave a shaky laugh. "I think we just got drafted into his after-action review." Chen looked toward the empty ridge. "Oh, he's been stuck here longer than any of them." I turned back toward the barracks. "Then we keep our word. When this exercise ends, we don't let the story stay buried in classified whispers. We tell it, clean, honest, no embellishment." We climbed the slope in silence. The path felt lighter. The air tasted cleaner. When we reached Building 4 and locked the door, the room was warm. Ordinary. The frost on the window had melted away. And we didn't sleep much. We didn't need to. For the first time since we arrived, the night was quiet. But we all knew the same thing. The trap wasn't closed yet. Not completely. One more night remained, and whatever came next would decide whether Hannibal's echo finally faded, or whether it followed us home. Chapter 6. Reliving the ambush. The sixth night arrived like a court-martial. You already know you're going to lose. We had stood on the shore and answered the drowned Romans. We had faced Hannibal on the ridge and taken his oath on cold iron. The fog had lifted when he faded, the lake had gone quiet, and for a few hours we dared to hope the cycle might be broken. But hope is a fragile thing in the military, and this place had been grinding men down for 2 millennia. Whatever we had done, it wasn't enough. Not yet. Day 6 was administrative. Final range clear, equipment turn-in, after-action reviews with the cadre. We moved through it like automatons. Every answer we gave felt rehearsed, every signature mechanical. The instructors complimented our platoon's performance. Clean, disciplined. No major safety violations, the lead evaluator said. You boys could teach the book. We nodded, thanked him, and walked away, knowing the real test was still waiting after lights out. Back in Building 4, we cleaned weapons one last time, packed duffels, checked manifests. Routine kept us steady. But every time someone opened a window, the fog was there, thicker than ever, pressing against the glass like it wanted to be invited in. By 2200, the base was silent except for the low hum of generators and the soft lap of water far below. We didn't wait for the trumpets. At 23:45, we were already outside. Same path, same order. Ellis leading, me on rear, Kowalski and Chen in the middle. No one spoke. The fog swallowed sound before it could travel more than a few meters. Our boots made no noise on the gravel. Halfway down the slope, the temperature plunged. Breath fogged instantly. The air tasted like wet iron and old blood. Then the world tilted. It didn't happen gradually. 1 second we were walking a modern dirt track between scrub and rocks. The next second the path was gone. In its place stretched a narrow defile, ancient churned mud, bordered by low hills on one side and black water on the other. The fog became smoke. The smell hit us, burning pitch, horse sweat, fear, copper. We were standing inside the battle. To our front, Romans marched in column, 30,000 men compressed into a single fatal file. Red shields, transverse crested helmets, pila rattling against mail. They moved fast, too fast, eyes fixed ahead, trusting their consul's orders. Gaius Flaminius rode at the head, purple cloak whipping, his face set in the grim certainty of a man who believes victory is inevitable. Behind us, on the slopes we had just descended, shapes stirred. Hannibal's army uncoiled. Numidians on light horses, Balearic slingers, Gallic swordsmen, Libyan spearmen. They flowed down the hills like water finding the lowest ground. No trumpets yet. Just the soft thunder of thousands of feet moving into position. We stood frozen in the middle of it. 4 modern soldiers in Gore-Tex and Kevlar, invisible to the dead, yet somehow part of the moment. The trap closed. A single horn sounded from the high ground, then another, then a third. The signal. The Carthaginians struck. From the left flank came a wall of javelins, black streaks in the smoke. Romans screamed as iron punched through shields and chests. From the right came the Gauls, howling, bare-chested, swinging long swords in wide arcs. The column buckled. Men turned to face one threat and expose their backs to another. The press became a crush. No room to form line, no room to retreat. Then the centre attacked. Hannibal's veterans, scarred, disciplined, pushed straight into the Roman rear. Swords rose and fell in short, economical strokes. Blood sprayed, men fell. The lake edge became a killing ground. Romans who tried to flee into the water sank under the weight of armour and panic. We heard the gurgle as they went under, the choked cries, the thrashing. We didn't watch passively. Something pulled us forward. Ellis moved first. Instinct, training, muscle memory. He stepped into the chaos, hands empty, but posture squared, like he was about to call a ceasefire. A Roman legionary staggered toward him, shield gone, and blood streaming from a gash across the forehead. The man looked straight at Ellis, through him, maybe, and rasped, "Fuge! Run!" Before Ellis could answer, a Gallic warrior charged out of the smoke, sword raised. The blade passed straight through Ellis's chest. No wound, no blood, just a flash of cold, so sharp it dropped him to one knee. The Gaul kept going, vanishing into the melee. Kowalski shouted, "They can't hurt us." But his voice cracked. Chen was already moving toward the water. A young Roman, barely 18, had waded in up to his thighs, trying to escape the slaughter. His mail was dragging him down. He locked eyes with Chen and reached out. "Adiuva." Chen extended his hand. The instant their fingers should have touched, the boy's form flickered. Armour dissolving into mist. A face smoothing into the same exhausted expression we had seen on the shore. He didn't sink. He simply faded, leaving only ripples. More came. Dozens. Hundreds. They rose from the shallows, reached for us, mouthed silent pleas, then dissolved when we tried to answer. Each contact brought the same burning cold, the same jolt that made muscles lock and breath stop. I lost count of how many we saved that way, how many we acknowledged before they vanished. Then the centre of the field shifted. Hannibal appeared again, mounted, crimson cloak dark with smoke. He didn't look at us. He looked at the Romans still fighting, still dying, still drowning. His single eye was calm, almost sorrowful. He raised his hand once. The entire battlefield paused. Every sword froze mid-swing, every scream cut off, every splash stilled. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. Hannibal turned the horse slowly until he faced us. "You swore," he said. The voice carried across the frozen carnage. "You swore to carry the truth beyond this place." I stepped forward, boots sinking into mud that wasn't really there. "We did?" "Then finish it." He pointed toward the lake, toward the spot where Flaminius had fallen, where the last of the Roman centre had been overwhelmed. "Speak their names, all of them, not as numbers, as men. Let the debt be paid." We didn't know the names, not individually, but we understood what he meant. Ellis stood. "Gaius Flaminius," he said clearly. Kowalski's followed. "Lucius Aemilius Paulus." Wrong consul, wrong battle, but the intent mattered. Chen spoke next. "Marcus Servilius." A name he pulled from somewhere. Maybe memory, maybe instinct. I went last. "Every man who marched here, every man who drowned here, every man who still waits, we see you, we remember you." With the final word, the frozen scene cracked. A wind rose, sharp, clean, blowing from the ridge down to the water. The fog tore apart. The battlefield dissolved. Hannibal gave one slow nod. Then he too faded. Cloak last, single eye lingering until the very end. We were back on the modern path. Gravel under boots. Fog gone, moonlight bright. The lake lay flat and silver, silent. No screams, no voices, just wind in the pines. We stood there a long time. Finally Ellis spoke, voice rough. "Think that was it?" I looked at the water. "I think we just fought the battle with them, and this time someone answered." We climbed the slope without looking back. When we reached Building 4, the barracks felt empty in a new way, not haunted but finished. One night left. Tomorrow we would leave. But tonight, for the first time in 2,000 years, the ridge slept. Chapter 7. Breaking the Trap. The seventh night felt different before we even stepped outside. We had lived the ambush with them. We had spoken the names. We had taken Hannibal's oath on iron that wasn't really there, and felt the battlefield dissolve around us when we did. The ridge had slept afterward, truly slept for the first time since we arrived. No trumpets at 3 a.m, no shadows on the walls, no voices rising from the lake. Just silence, clean and deep, the kind you notice because it's missing something that used to live in it. Day 7 was Departure Day. Final formation at 0600. Accountability, load-out, convoy brief. The cadre shook our hands, told us we'd set the standard for future rotations. We smiled, thanked them, loaded duffels into the Humvees. Routine carried us forward like momentum. But every glance toward the lake reminded us the job wasn't finished. One night remained, one chance to close the circle. We told the platoon we needed to run a quick final security sweep. Standard excuse. No one questioned it. At 2300, the barracks emptied. Most of the company had already rolled out that afternoon. The rear detachment was light. Building 4 stood quiet, except for the 4 of us, and we didn't take much. Flashlights, jackets, sidearms, one small item each of us had prepared during the day. Ellis carried a folded American flag, the small ceremonial kind we keep in rucks for memorials. Kowalski had a single dog tag he'd bought at the PX in Vicenza, blank on one side. He'd scratched a name into it with a knife point. Unknown Roman, 217 BC. Chen held a small olive branch clipped from a tree near the motor pool that afternoon. I carried a sheet of notebook paper folded tight, the names we had spoken written in block letters, every one we could remember from history and from the visions. We walked the path for the last time. The fog was there, but thin, more mist than wall. Moonlight cut through it in silver shafts. The air smelled of pine and clean water, not blood. Halfway down the slope, we stopped. No need to go all the way to the shore this time. The ground itself would carry the words. We formed a loose semicircle facing the lake. Ellis spoke first. We came here to train. We stayed to listen. Tonight, we leave. But we don't leave you behind. He unfolded the flag and laid it on the gravel. The red and white stripes caught the moonlight like they were made of something brighter than cloth. Kowalski stepped forward next. He held up the dog tag so the metal flashed. "This is for the men who never got one, the ones who marched under Flaminius, who fought until the water took them. We don't know your names, we never will. But you were soldiers, you were brothers, you were enough." He placed the tag on the flag, chain coiled neatly. Chen came next. He knelt and set the olive branch across the flag's blue field. "Peace," he said simply. "Not victory, not defeat, just rest. You've earned it." I went last. I unfolded the paper and read the names aloud, slow, clear, every syllable deliberate. Gaius Flaminius, Lucius Aemilius, Marcus Servilius, Quintus Fabius, every legionary, every auxiliary, every man who drowned here in the spring of 217 BC, every soul still bound to this water and these hills. We see you, we name you, we carry you beyond this place. When the last name left my mouth, the air changed. A breeze rose, soft, steady, moving from the ridge down toward the lake. It lifted the edges of the flag, rustled the olive leaves, made the dog tag chime once against itself. Then the shapes came. Not an army this time, not a battle, individuals. They rose from the water first, pale, translucent, armor faint as smoke. Legionaries. One by one they stepped onto the shore, stood a moment, looked at us. Some nodded, some raised a hand in salute. Some simply met our eyes and let the recognition pass between us like a password finally answered. From the slopes behind us came the others, Hannibal's men. Numidians, Gauls, Iberians, Libyans. They moved down slowly, without haste, without weapons raised. Hannibal rode at the rear. No cloak tonight, just a plain tunic, the scarred eye calm. He stopped higher up the slope and watched. One Roman stepped closest, a centurion, helmet crest broken, face lined with the exhaustion of endless marches. He looked at the flag, the tag, the branch, the paper. Then he looked at me. "Gratias tibi," he said. "Thank you." The words were soft. They carried on the breeze and settled into the ground. More voices joined, quiet, overlapping, grateful. Not pleas, not screams. Thanks, farewell, release. They began to fade, not violently, not in terror, gently. One by one the figures grew thinner, paler, until moonlight passed straight through them. The centurion was last. He raised his right fist to his chest, Roman salute, held it a heartbeat, then dissolved into silver mist that drifted upward and vanished against the stars. Hannibal remained a moment longer. He met my eyes across the distance. No words, just a single slow nod, the acknowledgement of one soldier to another. Then he turned the horse and rode up the ridge. The mist followed him. When he reached the crest, he was gone. The breeze died. The flag lay still on the gravel. The lake was mirror flat, reflecting only stars. No cold, no pressure, no waiting. We stood there until the moon began to lower. Ellis folded the flag carefully and tucked it inside his jacket. Kowalski picked up the dog tag and slipped it into his pocket. Chen gathered the olive branch and held it like something fragile. I folded the paper and put it away. No one spoke on the walk back. When we reached Building 4, we locked the door one last time. The room was warm, ordinary. The windows showed only night and distant lights from the village across the water. We finished packing in silence. At 0400, the convoy rolled out. We sat in the Humvees, watching the base shrink in the rearview mirrors. The lake passed on our left. Calm, silver, empty. No one looked away. When the ridge finally disappeared behind a curve, Kowalski broke the quiet. "You think they're gone?" Ellis answered without turning. "I think they're free." Chen nodded once. "And we're carrying the debt now." I looked out at the road ahead. "Then we pay it the only way we know how. We tell the truth when we get home. No embellishment, no drama. Just what happened here." The convoy climbed toward Perugia. Dawn was coming, pink along the eastern hills. Behind us the lake lay still. For the first time in 2,000 years, nothing waited beneath the surface. Nothing marched the fog. Nothing screamed. Just water and wind, and the long memory of men who finally heard their names spoken. We kept driving.